The sun had barely risen over the Washington, D.C. skyline when chaos erupted at Dulles International Airport Customs. An unusual buzz quickly spread among the staff, their gazes fixed on a couple who looked strangely familiar. "Bloody hell," exclaimed the red-haired man, his voice thick with a British accent. Beside him, a dark-haired woman tried to maintain her composure, her eyes revealing a mixture of frustration and disbelief. The customs agent, a middle-aged man with deep circles under his eyes, stared blankly at his computer screen, his face a mask of confusion. "Sir, ma'am, I'm sorry to inform you, but we have a problem with your declared belongings." The couple exchanged worried looks. They were none other than Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, members of British royalty, now embroiled in a Kafkaesque situation in the land of Uncle Sam. Have you ever wondered how something so trivial could turn into an international incident? Well, get ready for a story that will make you rethink the next time you decide to take Grandma's homemade jam on an international trip. What exactly is the problem? Meghan asked, her voice calm but with a hint of tension. The agent cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, the items in question are, well, jam and homemade biscuits." Harry couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. "You're kidding, right? It's just a gift from my grandmother, you know, the Queen of England." The silence that followed was deafening. Meanwhile, behind the scenes of power, a storm began to brew. News of the customs incident reached President Donald Trump faster than a viral tweet. "They did what?" Trump thundered, his face turning a shade of red that rivaled the Oval Office carpet. His aides cringed, knowing they were about to witness one of the president's famous tantrums. Back at the airport, the situation was far from resolved. A crowd of onlookers began to form, smartphones in hand, ready to capture the moment when British royalty faced American bureaucracy. "This is ridiculous," Harry muttered, running a hand through his red hair in frustration. "We're talking about jelly, for God's sake. It's not like we're trying to smuggle crown jewels." Meghan, ever the diplomat, tried to calm the situation. "Surely we can come to an agreement. Perhaps we can donate the items to a local charity?" The customs agent, sweating profusely now, shook his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the rules are clear. Undeclared raw foods are strictly prohibited. I'll have to report it." At that time, no one could have predicted that small incident would turn into a diplomatic crisis that would shake relations between the United States and the United Kingdom. As the saying goes, for the sake of a nail, the kingdom was lost, or in this case, for the sake of a jar of jam. As the royal couple were escorted to a private waiting room, rumors were already starting to spread. In the age of social media, the truth is often the first victim, and this story was about to take on a life of its own, far beyond the control of anyone involved. The Oval Office was buzzing with frenetic energy. Donald Trump, his eyes fixed on a TV screen showing images of the royal couple at the airport, drummed his fingers impatiently on the presidential table. "This is huge!" Trump exclaimed, his face lighting up with a mix of excitement and determination. "It's the perfect opportunity to show that no one is above the law in our country. Not even royalty." His aides exchanged nervous glances. One of them, gathering courage, spoke up, "Mr. President, perhaps we should consider the diplomatic implications before." "Diplomacy?" Trump interrupted, laughing. "America first, remember? If they want to play, let's play. Get the deportation papers ready." Meanwhile, at the airport, Harry and Meghan waited anxiously in a VIP lounge, completely oblivious to the storm brewing in the White House. "Darling," said Meghan, holding Harry's hand, "I have a bad feeling about this. Maybe we should call your father?" Harry nodded, picking up the phone with a heavy sigh. Across the Atlantic, Prince Charles nearly choked on his afternoon tea upon receiving the news. "Deported? Because of jam? That's absurd," he exclaimed, his voice echoing through the corridors of Buckingham Palace. Back in Washington, the American bureaucratic machine was in full swing. Stamps were tapping on official documents, phones were ringing incessantly, and an unprecedented decision was about to be made. "Mr. President," said an aide, rushing into the Oval Office, "the papers are ready for your signature. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Trump picked up the pen, a satisfied smile on his face. "Watch and learn," he said, signing off with a flourish. This will make America great again. At the airport, the atmosphere was tense. Harry and Meghan were surprised by the arrival of a group of agents from the U.S. Immigration and Customs Service, ICE. Prince Harry, Duchess Meghan, the lead agent said, his voice deep and formal, "I regret to inform you that, by direct order of the President of the United States, you are being deported from the country." The silence that followed was deafening. Harry, in disbelief, finally found his voice. "This is a joke, right? One of those American TV pranks?" Meghan, ever the pragmatist, intervened. "There must be some mistake. Surely we can resolve this in a civilized way. After all, as they say here, let's not make a mountain out of a molehill." But as the reality of the situation began to set in, it became clear that this wasn't just a molehill, it was a diplomatic Everest. And as the royal couple were escorted out of the airport, one thing was certain: the world was about to go into uproar. Social media exploded with the news. Hashtags like #RoyalDeportation and #Jellygate dominated Twitter, while memes of Prince Harry holding a jar of jelly spread like wildfire across Instagram. On CNN, Anderson Cooper was adjusting his tie, preparing for a last-minute special. "Good evening, America. Today, we witness one of the most surreal events in modern diplomatic history." On the other side of the political spectrum, on Fox News, Tucker Carlson could barely contain his enthusiasm. "Finally, friends, we see that laws apply to everyone, even royalty. That's what we call true equality." In the United Kingdom, the BBC interrupted its regular programming. "We apologize for the interruption. Urgent news arrives from Washington, D.C., where the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were." Meanwhile, in the depths of the internet, conspiracy theories began to simmer. One Reddit user wrote, "What if the jelly was just a front? Maybe they were smuggling state secrets." Speculations multiplied every minute. Some spoke of falsified documents, others of a plot to undermine American democracy. The truth, as always, was the first victim. In a TV studio in Los Angeles, Ellen DeGeneres tried to lighten the mood. "Well guys, it looks like Harry and Meghan have really gotten themselves into a sticky situation this time. Get it? Sticky? Because of the jam?" On the streets of New York, London, and other major cities, protesters began to gather. Posters with phrases like "Free the royal jelly" and "Make scones, not deportations" colored the crowds. Back at the White House, Trump's aides were struggling to control the narrative. "The president is simply applying the law fairly and impartially," insisted Sarah Huckabee Sanders in a tense press conference. Meanwhile, on air, the plane taking Harry and Meghan back to the UK became the focus of unprecedented live coverage. News helicopters followed him, broadcasting his every move. On social media, celebrities began to speak out. Oprah Winfrey tweeted, "This is outrageous. Who hasn't wanted to take a little piece of home on a trip?" The controversy has even reached the world of sports. LeBron James posted a photo holding a jar of jelly with the caption, "Solidarity with my royal homies. #Jelly for Justice." In London, Buckingham Palace issued a carefully worded statement. "The royal family is aware of the situation involving the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and is working to resolve the misunderstanding diplomatically." Meanwhile, on the streets of Washington, D.C., a crafty street vendor was already selling t-shirts with the phrase, "I survived the Great Jelly Crisis of 2025. They were selling out quickly. As the day progressed, it became clear that this incident had turned into much more than a simple customs issue. It was a cultural phenomenon, a diplomatic watershed and, for many, a symbol of the strange times in which we lived. As an old Chinese proverb said, "May you live in interesting times." And, without a doubt, times could not be more interesting. The telephone in the British Prime Minister's office rang shrilly. On the other end of the line, Prince Charles's deep voice sounded more strained than ever. "We need to act, and act now." Meanwhile, at the UN, an emergency session of the Security Council was convened. Diplomats from around the world gathered, their faces marked with concern and disbelief. At the White House, Trump paced back and forth, his blonde hair bouncing with each step. "They'll see," he murmured. "No one is above American law. Nobody." In London, crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, chanting "God Save the Queen" and brandishing jars of jam in solidarity. The irony did not go unnoticed by the most attentive observers. Back in the U.S., anti-immigration protesters celebrated Trump's decision. A man at a rally shouted, "If we can deport princes, we can deport anyone." The crowd roared in approval. On social media, the hashtag "No one is above the law" was going viral, with opinions divided over its meaning. For some, it was a cry for justice; for others, a symbol of xenophobia. In an MSNBC studio, Rachel Maddow adjusted her glasses, preparing for yet another impassioned monologue. Friends, what we are witnessing is nothing less than an attack on the very notion of international diplomacy. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, senators and representatives from both parties engaged in heated debates. "Is this what America stands for now?" asked a Democratic senator, his voice shaking with indignation. At Trump Tower, in New York, protesters gathered, some in favor, others against the decision. Police formed a cordon, fearing the situation could escalate quickly. At Mar-a-Lago, Trump's advisors tried to convince him to reconsider. "Mr. President," pleaded one, "think of the long-term implications for our relations with the United Kingdom." Trump, however, remained unyielding. "America first," he declared, his face red with determination. "If they don't like it, let them eat cake, or jelly," he added with an ironic smile. At the State Department, diplomats worked frantically, trying to defuse the crisis. Phone calls were made, emails exchanged, hoping to find a solution before it was too late. In embassies around the world, American diplomats faced scrutiny and outrage from their hosts. In Paris, the U.S. ambassador was seen hurriedly leaving a meeting, muttering something about la diplomatie du pudding. At the border with Mexico, Border Patrol agents were reporting a sudden increase in the number of people trying to enter the U.S. with jars of jam. "It's like everyone wants to test the system," commented one exasperated agent. As the sun set over Washington, D.C., it was clear that this crisis was far from over. Trump's zero-tolerance policy had reached new heights, and the world watched in fascination and horror as international diplomacy unfolded in real time. As the old saying goes, in for a penny, in for a pound, or in this case, in for a jelly, in for a jar. The sun was rising over London when the plane carrying Harry and Meghan finally touched down. The press waited in a frenzy, cameras clicking incessantly as the couple emerged, visibly exhausted but determined. Meanwhile, at the White House, Trump woke up to a barrage of messages. World leaders, celebrities, and even his own daughter, Ivanka, begged for reconsideration. "Daddy," Ivanka's message read, "sometimes you catch more flies with honey, or jelly." At the UN, an emergency session was underway. The British representative, in an impassioned speech, declared, "We are on the brink of an international crisis because of a spread." At Buckingham Palace, Queen Elizabeth II called an emergency meeting. His face was serious, but his eyes shone with a determination that only 70 years on the throne could provide. Back in the USA, an unexpected alliance was forming. Renowned chefs from across the country joined in protest, declaring a National Jam Day in solidarity with the Sussexes. On social media, the hashtag #SpreadLoveNotHate movement was gaining momentum, with people sharing photos of their breakfasts accompanied by homemade jams. Trump, feeling the mounting pressure, finally caved. Okay, he muttered to his advisors, "let's give these royals a second chance. But it has to be huge." News of the turnaround spread like wildfire. CNN, Fox News, BBC, all networks paused their programming for the special announcement from the White House. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, visibly relieved, announced to the press, "The President, in his great wisdom and mercy, has decided to extend an olive branch to our British friends." In the United Kingdom, the news was received with jubilation. Pubs across the country offered drink specials like the Royal Jelly Shot and the Sussex Smash. Harry and Meghan, still in London, received an official invitation to return to the USA. This time, Harry joked to the press, "We're leaving the jelly at home." The flight back to Washington was watched live by millions. When the plane landed, a surprising welcome awaited, Trump himself, with a wide smile and a giant jar of jam in his hands. "Welcome back," Trump exclaimed, extending his hand to Harry. "Let's put this sticky situation behind us, shall we?" The pun, although terrible, broke the ice, and nervous laughter echoed around the room. The scene that followed was almost surreal, the President of the United States, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, sitting in the Oval Office, enjoying cookies with the infamous jam. As the cameras clicked and the world watched, an important lesson emerged from this bizarre saga. Sometimes it takes a little sweetness to overcome the bitter divisions of international politics. And as Trump later tweeted, "Who knew jelly could make America great again?" #sweet diplomacy. The jelly incident, as it became known, would go down in history as one of the most peculiar and, ironically, unifying moments in modern politics.